Serious Renaissance Fair, RenFaire, employees, what are the funniest craziest horrific tales from working there, NSW. Question from a child at a cooking fire, is that real fire? Mother, no, they had no fire back then. One time, at the MN1, we had a woman that left her purse with over $35,000 at one of the food booth tables. Another time, one of the crafters kids got lice. Within a weekend, all the crafters kids had lice. Fair management has been rumored to at least twice have set fire to the place to destroy documents and stuff. A girl working the costume shop was in a Victorian era dress during the English monarch weekend. She managed to shart herself, and due to the massive undertaking of recostuming, she decided to try and play it off. It did not work. 90-degree weather combined with sweat and crappy undies is a horrible mix. There were little kids sprinting out of the costume shop retching and people generally avoided the area all day. The kicker is, for whatever reason, at the end of the day, she revealed the source of the miasma to be herself. She never came back. A guy I knew fell onto the blacksmith's fire and basically melted his arm because an owl the falconer couldn't control swooped at his hair and tried to rip it off. A very similar incident happened at an AZ RenFaire this year. Guy fainted from the outdoor temperature plus lack of good air. Said he woke up just in time to see his hand grow skinny and fingers curl away. He's stable now but he's already lost his entire forearm and might lose more if they can't stay ahead of the damage to his humerus. I worked the Colorado Renaissance Festival my senior year in high school. I would stay in the back behind the bar where we served drinks and fill up cups. Every freaking day, this guy who had geese would come in and sit in the outside area. He could see me making drinks and he would just sit there and stroke his stupid geese. One by one he would pick up his goose and slowly stroke it, never leaving his unnerving eyes from me. Honestly creeped me out. I only worked 1 year at fair as a fool with the Court of Misrule for a very well-known Renaissance fair. Each guild was allowed to have up to 2 of their people stay the night in their guild's area for security. Well, that year, the guy staying overnight from Clan MacCollin, which was basically the Scottish guild, got caught fricking one of the clan's sheep by another guild security person. That year the most popular fair flair, little pins you wear on your garb, was one that said BAA means number. I used to play drums for a belly dance troupe at my local fair, but this story happened when I was attending another fair as a patron. We were in our tent settling down to sleep when we hear a girl climax off in the distance. A few minutes go by and she passionately wails again. After 3 more loud orgasms, we hear a guy yell bravo and the whole campground starts applauding. So this happened to some of my buddies. They ship glitter for use in their fairy themed booths at Fest. They have a large white van and were traveling down Arizona. They get stopped by Border Patrol, who pulls them over and asks them what they are transporting. The driver, being a smart ass, says fairy paraphernalia. This of course gets their van searched. The cops find all these vacuum plastic bricks in the van. Now I bet you don't know, but the way glitter is transported in bulk is in vacuum plastic bricks. Looks exactly like bricks of drugs from TV or movies. The cop grabs one and asks the driver what this is. The driver, still being a smart ass, says I'd like to exercise my right to remain silent. So the cop pulls out a pocket knife to open the brick. The driver says, "Officer, I wouldn't do that if I were you. I bet you don't know that when you vacuum pack a powder and then break the seal it explodes." The officer stabs the brick, which causes 5 pounds of glitter to explode all over him. The officer's partner busts out laughing and says to his partner, "Oh no, you're not getting in my squad car like that. So if you're ever driving down I-10 in Arizona near the border, be sure to say hello to Sergeant Sparkles." 1 year I worked security for a Renaissance fair oldie English fair in central Illinois. The most entertaining memory I have occurred during my daily rounds of the campgrounds. Over the radio I hear the following message: "Security, please be aware of a shirtless man wearing pink pants. He was last seen at the belly dancing stage asking the dancers to whip him with his own whip. Approach with caution." Not long after I see a band of security volunteers, dressed in fair garb, running and tackling this man and escorting him off the premises. Some guy this year jumped into the show and stole a character's sword. The character's wife in real life as well, jumped on the guy and got him in a chokehold until police arrived. Badass woman. participant at one of Europe's larger medieval festivals here. During an Scar tournament, one of the fighters had his helmet thwacked well and hard, as it should be. However, the helmet dented under around the jawline of the fighter. This meant that he could not get it off, nor could anybody else help him pry it off. They had to get a blacksmith with a hammer, chisel and chopping block out there. So, in front of an audience, the man places his helmeted head on the chopping block whilst the blacksmith starts chiseling the helmet open whilst it's still on the dude's head. And remember, the dent was around his jawline. That is, the metal sat dang close to the skin of his face and neck. One wrong thwack and he'd be disfigured or dead. In the end, they got him out. The audience cheered and he turned to his friend and said, "I may have lost the tournament, but I freaking won Visby." Back when I was in high school I worked at SCRPF. A teacher who taught at my school also worked there. He played the tax collector. So this one time another performer friend of ours was eating cookies. The tax collector walks up and with his mean tax collector face says, "Cookie tax." Our friend didn't know what to do as he had pretty much just put the last cookie in his mouth while the tax collector was talking. So being the good improviser he was, he spit some cookie back into his hand and presented it to the tax collector. The tax collector paused for a second, said thank you, and ate the pre-chewed cookie out of my friend's hand. Talk about commitment to a bit. That's how you assert your freaking dominance. Good old TRF. The Texas RenFaire. By far the most insane thing I saw was after clocking out and changing, I headed out to party in the patrons' campground. One thing leads to another and I am with a very drunk party, in the pouring rain under one of those wall-less awnings. As the lighting lit up the sky, I saw what appeared to be two people getting to work in a mud puddle in the rain. I was stunned. This couldn't be real. The sky lights up again and I get a clear view this time. A man who was around 6 feet tall and rail thin was just absolutely going crazy on a morbidly obese woman who had her skirt hiked up and was face down in the mud. So I did what any responsible American would do. I informed everyone around me and we started cheering for the commitment they had to getting herpes from a stranger at TRF. I worked at a smaller RenFaire in the eastern US for 2 seasons. We only had about 50 cast, including penumbral cast and volunteers, so gossip ran rampant. Some highlights I heard between shows: Robin Hood was cheating on Lady Macbeth with the Duchess. A group of merry men were in the break room insulting a patron for his odd behavior. Turns out he had autism and this was the first major event he went to. Those people were mysteriously gone next season. Thankfully, a little kid had tried to go swimming in the lake and almost drowned, but a pirate in a rowboat jumped in, saved him, and spent the rest of the day with him and his parents showing him around the fairgrounds. There was a bomb threat on the fair. The police came in and one of the directors tried to tell the performers to act normal and stay in character. He didn't last long. This season we had a drunk who wanted to fight one of my group's guards. Our guards look tough and many of them do have real life military backgrounds, but performers may not touch patrons. It's security's job to deal with them. My baron had to step in and keep the guy occupied until security came, which led to it turning into a scene and a crowd gathering not realizing what was really happening. Orcs. There's a woman who comes to the fair every day of every season and really wants to play with us. Unfortunately she doesn't seem to understand the whole no touching thing or that we are actors and it's a show. She's also 6 feet 2 inches or so, very big, and very fast. She also garbs herself in various scraps of fur and leather and until recently insisted on being period correct, aka no undergarments whatsoever. We call her the Amazon. I worked at a shop that sold baby dragons, aka green anoles. They are very small, calm, friendly lizards and once you hold them for a few minutes they get used to your body heat and will chill with you all day. They also have green, brown, yellow color changing camouflage. My job was to stand outside the shop and let people pet them. My favorite part was letting them pet the one I was holding in my hand, then pulling 2 or 3 more off various parts of my costume and scaring the crap out of the unsuspecting patrons with the extra lizards. The weirdest interaction I've ever had at a RenFaire is when a baby dragon vendor put a lizard on my pregnant belly and insisted he could tell if I was having a boy or girl by the way the anole curled its tail. So I do Middle Eastern drumming and flute for a belly dance show. In between showtimes I would often walk around with the belly dancers to advertise for our next show and interact with the patrons. One fateful day as I was escorting 3 beautiful dancers, a mostly drunk guy jumps in front of our path holding up a wooden sword and yells, "I'll fight you for them." I say, "Friend, I do not think the Sultan would permit it." Then we just try to keep walking, trying to laugh it off. He points his sword at me and says again, "I'll fight you for them." Honestly, I am pretty scared at this point. He is being pretty aggressive and he is noticeably drunk. At this point his friends have noticed and they are all laughing at him and certainly not stepping in to calm him down. I just roll with it and take out my Egyptian flute, called a knee, and make a challenge. We are not fighters, but entertainers, so I challenge you to a duel. I will play my flute and you will show this motley crowd your no doubt amazing dance moves, and then we shall let them decide who wins. Without waiting for an answer, I start playing my flute and he starts dancing. The belly dancers are cheering him on and his friends are laughing. He is horrible and drunk. I motion to him while still playing to follow me and I start walking backwards. I actually led this poor drunk sap off the path and out of our way. I then in one motion swoop around him, grab the girls, and say, "Ah, thank you very much, I do believe I win." We continue on our way, leaving the drunk fool and his friends laughing and pointing at him. We laughed and I gave a huge sigh of relief. By far the coolest and most tense moment at the fair. I went to RenFest about 10 years ago. While hanging out, there's a performance happening. A guy is standing on a box, shouting out to the audience. He starts pretend shooting imaginary arrows at the audience. This one guy in the crowd gets hit and really gets into it. He drops to the ground, begins twitching, foaming at the mouth, and holy frick, he's actually having a seizure. So the RenFest worker realizes what's going on and runs to get help. In his dedication to his craft, he plows through the crowd yelling, "Clear thy path, clear thy path." The guy was okay, and I know this is a tad dark, but I can't help but laugh at the worker's dedication and reaction. I was a performer at a couple of RenFaires, including the largest one in Texas, for about a decade, and we had a number of crazy things happen. A few that I remember in particular. RenFaires sell a lot of weapons, and while they shouldn't be selling to heavily intoxicated individuals, it can happen. One guy, incredibly drunk, got in an argument with someone from his group of friends on the way to their car in the parking lot. He stabbed that friend with a big ass fantasy knife he just bought 19 times in less than a minute. The previously contracted jousters at the big fair were, functionally, rednecks with horses that didn't do a lot to maintain their equipment, etc. This came to a head when, during the chariot race, a wheel came off mid-race and flew into an entirely different area of the site, breaking a kid's arm. During a path show with the Robin Hood group where the sheriff gets banished from Sherwood Forest, the actor playing Robin Hood, as a joke, tells the half dozen or so kids in his periphery to attack the sheriff. What he didn't see was that we had a particularly large crowd behind him, so closer to 40 kids, ranging from 3'11", chased the sheriff through the entire area. When we caught up, around stopping to laugh, he was being held at sword point by a 6-year-old girl in a fairy princess costume. I worked at the Hall of Oddities, in charge of a live 2-headed turtle and all sorts of other curiosities. We had a unicorn skull in one room, and I overheard a shocked little girl say to her mother, "Mom, they killed a unicorn for this." Her mom said, "No, honey, I'm sure they didn't. They found the skull. The unicorn died of natural causes." The girl shot back a dark look and said, "Mom, unicorns are immortal." Huh, good point, kiddo. Some of my craziest stories are, I sometimes carry a big basket with dolls' arms and legs sticking out of it, making it look like I am stealing children. A little girl screams at the top of her voice he is eating babies. All the adults are laughing, but she is slapping her dad on the leg and shouting, "Aren't you going to stop him? He is going to eat those babies." An enthralled child introduced me to his mother who was trying on a corset, and he asks his mother, "Can be our next daddy?" Having 20 kids run around me with a rope, like an attendant from Empire Strikes Back, followed with a butterfly net on a pole over the head. Then they shouted, "Topple the giant," and then pulled on the ends of the rope like a tug-of-war, but with just me trying to stop them and 2 kids wrapped around my legs. I lowered myself into a horse stance and fought foot by foot until I got into the beer garden, and the kids melted off because they knew they couldn't get in. I have to The first is from when I was working security at a fair on the East Coast. It was kids' day and the normal head of security could not make it, so I was doing his job for him. During the day, as part of a show, the sheriff of Nottingham would tell the audience that there was a bounty on Robin's head. But the small children in the audience took this very seriously and, using wooden swords of good quality, took after Robin Hood in a large pack. He got hit a few times but managed to hide in the cast tent. So for the rest of the day he had a security escort no matter where he went. The second was a larger fair on the same coast. We were winding down at the end of the fair day around a fire. Several of the female employees decided that they no longer required clothing, so it became naked o'clock. A gentleman from another camp came down to join us in our activities but was told that he had to remain clothed if he was going to borrow any of our chairs. He did not comply, so the guy I was working for went and fetched himself an airsoft pistol. He told the guy in the chair that if he did not put his pants back on he would shoot him in the dong. One of the women sitting with us, who was also nude, put on some safety glasses because, in her words, safety first. The nude chair borrower did not believe my employer despite all of us telling him it was serious, and he ended up with a number of nasty welts. Worked a small one-day fair in a rural town for a few years in the late 2000s. We were very unserious about anachronism and such, so while we dressed up in period garb we had guests as Klingons, anime characters, whatever. It was a de facto con for the area. We were also much more kid-oriented than men affairs. No alcohol, no bawdy humor, less of the bosoms everywhere that you often see at fairs, and more jugglers, beanbag tosses, and other kids stuff. We prided ourselves on the fact that we were considered a big event for the whole town and not just a small group fair folk. One year, we had a girl show up. She was kinda gothy looking and 15 or 16 if I had to guess. The weird part, though, was her companion, who wore a full wolf fursuit, and who she walked around our fair, on hands and knees, on a leash. I know people say that furries are not always a fetish thing, but come on, this was a fetish thing. The leash, the fact that he, or she, but the wolf was big, probably at least 6 feet, so I'm guessing he never spoke, stood up, or took off the mask. The fact that she was dressed like some kind of demented Catholic schoolgirl. There were clear exhibitionist domination angles in addition to the fursuit, which is weird enough on its own. The worst part is that I was manning a kids activity at the time, finger painting, and a bunch of kids were like doggy and ran over to pet him. We tried to keep them away without making a scene, and we didn't confront the couple because they weren't actually doing anything wrong. We had a few staff keep an eye on them, and after half an hour they left. We considered making a no furries rule for the next year, but decided against it, and it was irrelevant because they didn't come back. You've been visited by the cool dude's dog. You will be blessed with coolness if you comment "catch a wave papa." Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.